Financial with Christopher Calandra, Certified Financial Planner, is an innovative, comprehensive, informative, and cutting-edge podcast that discusses financial topics ranging from personal finance, economics, politics, and personal growth. Simply Financial will cover intriguing and thought-provoking questions so that the listener can simply increase their financial IQ.
Welcome to the Simply Financial Podcast. I'm your host, Christopher Calandra. This is episode number 8, season 4. Robocalls. What a pain in the blank. I'd probably use a different word, but this is sort of a family show, and I want to be professional. But I think you get what I mean. Unwanted robocalls are a big pain in the rear end. There was a time you didn't really get them on your cell phone, but technology has caught up, and you're able now, unfortunately, to get lots of robocalls on your phone. I know I get a ton of them, but in late 2019, the government passed the TRACED Act. It's capital TRACED, and it offers consumers additional protections against robocalls. Finally, the government does something that I think everyone, regardless of their political views, can agree is a good idea. So this scenario many Americans have found themselves in, answering a phone call only to find out it's from an unwanted robocaller, is again a big pain in the blank. In fact, the number of unwanted robocalls in this country has skyrocketed in recent years. I know personally I could attest to this because I get so many on my cell phone, it drives me nuts. The Federal Communications Commission, the FCC, ranks unwanted robocalls as one of the highest things on their list of consumer complaints. So it's not just me that's irritated. I imagine most, if not all of you that are listening to this podcast would have the same complaint as me. Fortunately, consumers have won additional protections against unwanted robocalls under this recent legislation that was signed by President Trump. When I say recent, this was in the latter stages of 2019. It stands for the Robocall Abuse Criminal Enforcement and Deterrence Act. You like that cool Traced Act play on words? But in all seriousness, one of the main goals of the Traced Act is to establish rules to protect consumers from receiving calls from unauthenticated numbers. So some of the provisions of the Traced Act include: number 1, requiring all carriers to implement new caller ID technology at no additional charge to consumers. I've noticed this already. I have an iPhone, and I have begun getting some calls this month. I'm recording this in the latter part of January 2020, where a number will come in. It's a number I don't recognize, but my carrier is helping me because it says potential spam. And before, you would just get a number you didn't recognize. Now you're getting this additional help. So I think that the implementation of this part of the Traced Act is already beginning to take effect. So again, the Traced Act requires all carriers to implement new caller ID technology at no additional charge to consumers. Number 2, extending the statute of limitations for prosecuting illegal robocallers. So I guess this is protections where you can sue robocallers and the statute of limitations is much longer. I don't know much about that. I'm not going to really sue the robocallers. I don't know how that works, but I guess that's a good provision too. Number 3, allowing the FCC to go after first-time robocall offenders. So I guess the FCC could swing into action much more quickly when they identify first-time robocall offenders. Number 4, there is increased penalties for robocall violations. That's hopefully a great deterrent for robocallers to obey the rules. They have not been for years, so this is a good sign. Number 5, the government is creating an interagency task force. All right, I'm skeptical already. I don't know about you, but They're creating an interagency task force to study and improve the government prosecution of robocall violations. I think robocallers should be held in check. I don't know about this interagency task force. Sounds like a lot of bureaucracy to me, but we'll see. And then sixth and final point is the establishment of a neutral consortium of carriers that will lead efforts to trace back the origins of robocalls. So the different carriers, the major carriers, I imagine that's Verizon, Sprint, AT&T, and so on. I don't know if this is an international effort, but they'll combine forces to try and trace back the origins of robocalls so that those that are offending against the rules would be dealt with appropriately. So I think it's exciting. I think the first one, though, is the best part because I like seeing on my phone that it says potential spam. It helps me out a lot. So I want to talk about, in the next phase of this episode, just some helpful tips. Did I say that right? Helpful tips on protecting yourself from unwanted robocalls. Because the reality is, and unfortunately, even with these new protections, it will take some time for all of the Traced Act provisions to fully take effect. In the meantime, what are some things that you can do to protect yourself? The first thing is, don't answer calls when you don't recognize the phone number. Instead, let them go to voicemail and check later to verify the caller. I think this is good advice, but it doesn't apply to everyone. So, for example, for me, I have a lot of business contacts that reach out to me on a cell phone, and I often will get numbers from people that I do want to pick up the phone, but I'm not sure if they're robocallers or not, and I won't find out if it's too late. So not answering the phone is not a great prescription. I have gotten better, though, that sometimes when you get a robocall and it says a particular number or even a location, like I got one this morning from Jewett City, Connecticut, that I'll get other calls from Jewett City, Connecticut, and I could self-identify that those are probably robocalls. But not answering the phone, if you're in business and using your cell phone, is not a great idea, because when customers or potential customers contact a business person and they go to voicemail, they tend to be disappointed. They're trying to get something done, and if you're not available at the time that they want it done, you're kind of making things more difficult. So I think that advice is good for some people, not so good for others. But definitely, if I look at my phone and I have a sense, and I've gotten better at it, I've got a sense that it's probably a robocall, I'll let it go. If I pick up the phone and I do find it's a robocall, I'll quickly hang up so that I don't waste my time and I don't get frustrated or agitated. But again, not picking up the phone is not great business for a lot of people, including me. Another option is to consider signing up for a robocall blocking service. Many phone service providers now offer robocall blocking solutions at no additional charge. Candidly, even though I'm giving this presentation and discussion on the show today, I haven't even looked into this. I didn't even realize it was an option until I did some research on the Traced Act. So it's on my list of things to do. But I will say I have a very big list of things to do. So that's another thing you could look at, see what your phone service provider has in terms of resources to help with robocall blocking. And then you can register your phone number for the National Do Not Call Registry, the DNC registry. That registry removes your number from the call list used by legitimate telemarketing companies. Now, my numbers, my cell phone, my wife's cell phone, the home number, we've had those numbers on the National Do Not Call Registry for a long time. I don't think it really works. But it seems to me, having researched this topic a bit in preparation for the show, is that legitimate telemarketing companies are abiding by the DNC registry. The trouble is you have so many bad actors, so many robocallers that are not abiding by the rules, that is gumming up our phones and all of us getting unwanted calls. So keep in mind that while registering with the DNC registry. You'll get fewer calls, probably, but that's probably going to be fewer calls from legitimate telemarketers. The Trace Act is intended to go after the bad actors, the illegal robocallers. Hopefully they will be successful because, as I said at the beginning, robocallers are a big pain in the blank. So I'm in favor of this act. Seems like a good idea. Hopefully all of us will get less robocalls and life will be just a little bit better with our cell phones. Thanks very much for listening. I will be back with you on the next episode of the Simply Financial Podcast very soon. In the meantime, go to elliottwealth.com to get more information about me and the rest of the team and how we can help you achieve your financial goals and win with money. And as I always ask, please sign up and become a regular listener for the Simply Financial Podcast. It's free, so we'd love to have you subscribe. Thanks again. Be back with you soon.
The views expressed are not necessarily the opinion of SagePoint Financial Incorporated and should not be construed directly or indirectly as an offer to buy or sell any securities mentioned herein. Investing is subject to risks, including loss of principal invested. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. No strategy can assure a profit nor protect against loss. Please note that individual situations can vary. Therefore, the information should be relied upon when coordinated with individual professional advice. Please note, the information being provided is strictly as a courtesy. When you link to any of the websites provided here, you are leaving this website. We make no representation as to the completeness or accuracy of the information provided at these websites, nor is the company liable for any direct or indirect technical or system issues or any consequences arising out of your access to your use of third-party technologies, websites, information, and programs made available through this website. When you access one of these websites, you are leaving our website and assume total responsibility and risk for your use of the websites you are linking to. Securities and advisory services are offered through SagePoint Financial Incorporated, member FINRA SIPC. Insurance services offered through Elliott Wealth Management, LLC, not affiliated with SagePoint Financial.
Simply Financial is part of the Exvadio Podcast Network. You can find Exvadio podcasts at exvadio.com/podcast, the Apple Podcasts app, iTunes Store, iHeartRadio app, Spotify, Stitcher, and wherever you find podcasts. So join us and stay informed and entertained.